Okay. Thanks everybody for joining us for the March meeting of the San Antonio chapter of the Native Plant Society of Texas. Really happy to have y'all here. We want to start off by welcoming any new members. Do we have any new members in the room? We do. Thank you. We would also like to welcome any new visitors. Do we have any new visitors that might become members? We do. Nice. And also, of course, always thanking any of our returning members. Sometimes it gets a little confusing to renew your membership. I've lapsed a couple times myself. So just if you can, take a look, make sure you're up to date on your membership. And we really thank everybody for joining us as a visitor and also as a member. Oh, I have to also point out, if you've got native milkweeds, you want to take a look because the monarch caterpillars might be out on them right now. This was taken just yesterday in downtown San Antonio on Zyzotes milkweed that was planted in a garden. And your first hint is that there might be little holes in the leaves. You can see some here. And very carefully, you want to take a look and see if there's any caterpillars because they start off about the size of a grain of sand, not sand, rice. So pretty tiny, but they're out there right now. So take a look if you've got that native milkweed. And last month we had a big announcement that we have started a Chapter Nice program. And it is official. We have 2 nurseries that are officially native plant partners. And we are going to recognize both, but I think there's only one representative here right now. And so the NICE program means natives improve and conserve environments. And our 2 official native plant partners for the chapter are Pollinatives and the Nectar Bar. And yes. And Pam has some signs. Oh, there she is. And we want to recognize, oh, we've got them both here now, just in time. We want to recognize these partners because the San Antonio chapter did apply some criteria to become one of our chapter native plant partners that is different than other chapters. And that is that these partners have committed to not selling plants that are on the texasinvasives.org list. So that's a pretty huge thing. And we want to recognize, we've got, I guess, Pam, you want to take it over?
Yeah. Good evening, I'm Pam Peck. I was the chair of the NICE committee, and our other members, if you aren't up here, if you'll come up here, were Lee Marlowe, Jerry Morrissey, and Donald Gerber. And so thank you to all of them for helping make this happen. You can now check out our San Antonio NICE page and our chapter's website. It's currently under the SA Programs tab, so check it out. It looks beautiful. Thank you, Teresa. And the NICE program is a voluntary collaboration between individual chapters of the Native Plant Society and select local nurseries called Native Plant Partners, or NPP. The goal is to promote and expand the availability and use of native plants in residential and commercial landscapes that are appropriate to our local ecoregion. Furthermore, as Lee said, our partners are committed to protecting our local ecosystems and do not stock or sell problematic plant species listed in texasinvasives.org. At this time, we have our 2 nursery representatives. Is Drake up here?
Yep.
Okay, well, there she is. Okay. And so we'll let the ladies go first. So Drake and Lee, if you and Jerry will present the site. So Drake, come over here so everyone can see.
Well, there's a bunch of cords over there.
Yeah. All right. All right. And Drake White is the owner and founder of the Nectar Bar. Drake has been gardening since she was a kid in Queens, New York. She has lived in the San Antonio area since 1999. In 2015, she was certified as a Texas Master Naturalist and quickly found her calling as a native plant advocate. Drake is locally known as the Butterfly Lady due to the wings and antennas she has donned as chief docent at the annual Fall Butterfly Festival. She helped design, install, and manage the Butterfly Learning Center here at Phil Harbor Park. And Drake started the Nectar Bar in 2013 as a native landscaping firm and quickly found it was difficult to source the required native plants for installation. So she started growing them in her backyard. In September 2023, Drake opened her retail nursery, and she continues to personally propagate some of her Nectar Bar's inventory. Drake is proud to be a native plant partner and looks forward to continued growth. She takes pride in her selection of native species and absolutely loves educating and helping her customers and the community. And I failed to say that both of these nurseries, the Nectar Bar and Pollinatives, carry a large and unique inventory of Texas native plants, many of which you will not find elsewhere, as they are sourced from small independent growers and hobbyists. So it's really a unique experience to go there. All right, so Drake, this is our sign, and there are a couple different forms of it, but this is the one she chose. Thank you to Judith Ballou, who is a member of our chapter, who helped us put that sign together. So they are beautiful. Thank you, all right, and Donald, is Melanie here?
She's here, yeah.
Well, Melanie.
She's hiding somewhere.
She didn't, she's shy. Okay. Okay, there she is. Wave. Okay, that's his better half, folks. Okay. All right, so. Yes. Which one do you want? Oh, we have two different. Okay.
It'll be different than Drake.
Okay. Right. Donald and Melanie Gerber are the owners and founders of Pollinatives. Donald has grown and propagated plants since he was a child in California, when he and his mother would bicycle to the local nursery. She would always purchase Donald his own seed packet, and on their way home, she would stop and take cuttings of local forbs, which they would then propagate together at home. Although Donald worked as an engineering technician until he retired in 2020, gardening was always his main hobby. As a California master gardener, he grew vegetables, then fruit trees, but he eventually found his way to native plants when he figured out that if you plant certain plants, you don't have to clean the hummingbird feeders anymore. He joined the Riverside chapter of the California Native Plant Society. When he retired in 2020, he and Melanie agreed to move to San Antonio so that Melanie could fulfill her wish to be near the grandchildren. And in return, she agreed to help Donald fulfill his wish of starting a native plant nursery. In 2021, they purchased an empty commercial lot in Converse and became certified Texas master naturalists. The grand opening of Pollinatives occurred in September 2023. So thank you, Donald, Drake, and Melanie. You have immeasurably enriched the San Antonio gardening community. All right, and so thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That is awesome. If you guys haven't been to either of these nurseries, you need to go. Okay, so we announced last month the unofficial 2024 pollinator plant of the year as clammy weed. And everybody that's here tonight, hopefully you got a little seed packet of Rio Grande clammy weed. And if you didn't, go grab one at the front. And also, there are a few little baby plants, actual plants over there at the Plants by Donation. So don't everybody rush over there, but at the end, after the presentation, there might be a few over there. And then keep on, come to some of the other events that are going to be happening. We'll be handing these out, and as long as our supplies last, and we have quite a lot of supplies right now, at events. And so the next event that we know that's going to happen is going to be in June at Confluence Park in partnership with the San Antonio River Foundation. They're going to have a farmer's market at Confluence Park. We'll be having a chapter booth there, and we'll be handing these out, and other places as well. Beautiful plant. Okay, we have a lot of announcements as far as events and calls for volunteers. And Jerry took off, but he was here. He is going to be giving an iNaturalist training, and this is tied to the upcoming and very exciting City Nature Challenge. So here's Jerry Morrissey to tell you more.
Yes, our chapter is one of the sponsors of the City Nature Challenge, which is an event, a worldwide event in the last week of April, in which all the major areas of the world have metro areas that actually try to identify as many plants and living species as they can and have a competition. So we are trying to gear up here and really increase the number of observers here in San Antonio. The app is called iNaturalist, which is used by scientists, the observations used by scientists to actually look at distributions. Actually, they found new species this way. They've done a lot of things with this. It was originally set up by the Cal Berkeley. So anyhow, I'm going to do some training since we're trying to get people to use cell phones are used for plants. You have to use digital cameras for birds and stuff like this. But anyhow, we set up a kind of competition within our own group in which we have team competitions. And so I'm going to try to organize some teams from the Native Plant Society to compete with Master Nafs and others. Actually, I already have a team. I'm called it Plant Stalkers. I have at least one member over here of my team. And so anyhow, what I would like, we would, of course, to use the app. It's not that difficult to use, but use it properly for scientific purposes. You need to do the proper photography to actually do things well. And you also can be more efficient at identifying stuff by taking the right things. So you can use this anywhere in the world you're traveling to actually identify anything that's living, lichens, fungi, plants, bugs, whatever. So I'm going to do a training at the Encino Branch Library on April 7th, which is Sunday a week at 3 p.m. And then we're going to go out and use the app to look at plants in the area, which I know very well. So anyhow, I also have a sign-up sheet back there for people who would like to join a team, because the advantage of going to a team is I've always found that people, either your plant friends know areas in their neighborhoods that have neat plants that you're not going to see otherwise, and you can get more enthusiasm. So I have a sign-up sheet back there. We can help put together some additional teams from our chapter. So anyhow, and the website where all of this information is, there's up to 35 events, planned events where we're going to do observations. Like most of the major north side parks are going to have observations on the weekend, and some other places that are unique that aren't typically open are going to be on Friday and Monday. So that's cnc/sa.org is where you can look at the information. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay, and speaking of Jerry, the upcoming 4th Saturday Nature Walk series here at Harburger Park is going to be a wildflower walk led by Jerry. It is April 27th from 8 a.m. until 10, and we meet here at the Urban Ecology Center. So put that on your calendar. It should be a really great event. There are lots of flowers blooming right now. It's amazing. So it should be a good time. Okay, now for all the calls for volunteers. I'll try to go quickly. The first one is at Pollinatives on April 6th. It will be a plant sale benefiting our chapter. And we are looking for, so go there if you want some plants for sure. But if you're interested in volunteering, we're looking for 1 volunteer for the 9 to noon shift and 3 volunteers for the noon to 2:30 shift. And you can talk to Pam if you're here in the room, or she's back there, or email Pam at nipsotsavolunteers@gmail.com. The next one is on Saturday, April 13th at Northern Hills United Methodist Church. This is the Good Earth Festival, and Todd Phillips is here somewhere. There he is in the back if you want to talk to him more about it. The Beatitudes Prayer Walk is a beautiful trail. Lots of natives. They've done a lot of work to protect and preserve the natives in place and add additional natives. And we're looking for some volunteers to spread the word about our chapter and native plants there. And we're looking for 2 volunteers from 10 to noon and 1 volunteer from noon to 2. Again, same contact Pam Peck and same email to let her know if you've got questions or you're interested in actually volunteering. The next one is we had to reschedule our workday at the Haven for Hope Pollinator Garden because of weather. And so we've rescheduled it for Sunday, April 14th. And it's going to be from 12:30 to 3. If you're interested in joining us, please reach out, let us know. It's a beautiful garden. It's a really good time. And we'll be trimming down some of the vegetation and selectively, and then also doing quite a bit of weeding. So mostly weeding. But it's a beautiful setting and a beautiful garden. The next one, I think Haley's going to come up and talk a little bit more. We've got a QR code here for a little bit more information, but we're looking for volunteers interested in participating in the Women's Club Fiesta Flower Show. And here's Haley to tell you some more.
Okay, so this event is something that's been held for a number of years, but it's our first year participating. They've asked us to have an information table there, so it's a great opportunity for us to reach new people in a new venue, and I think it's going to be a really neat show. So there's a lot of cut flower and potted plant entries that will be on display at the flower show. So here the volunteer shifts are for helping to man our outreach table. But the QR code is for you all, if you are interested in submitting a plant, whether it's cut flower in a vase, they have a number of different categories that are really interesting. And this QR code takes you to all the details of all the different categories you can enter. You can bring in a potted plant. And Sir Oliver Smith is one of our members here who is associated with the Women's Club. He brought a few of these plant tags here. So if you do think you want to participate and you want to get a head start on writing down your information so you don't need to do it the day of, you can grab one from him. But as far as submitting plants, you have the Thursday afternoon. They have a window of time that you can drop them off, and Friday morning before 10. So they purposely asked for more Texas native plants to be featured. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to show off just how cool some of our native plants are. So if you have some things that you think would be fun to include, give it a shot and see what happens. You might come home with a blue ribbon. You never know. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Haley.
Yeah, this is a first for us. Well, we did an educational table years ago, but this is a first to really be very active. Okay, Saturday, May 18th at the Bandera Road location of Rainbow Gardens. We are participating in Society Day there, and there are a couple of shifts. One is from 10 to noon, the other noon to 2. So if you're interested, please reach out to Pam. And then also the Festival of Flowers, Saturday, June 8th, 2 shifts, one from 8:30 to noon, the other one from noon to 3:30. Again, reach out to Pam. Our next chapter meeting is on April 23rd, and the topic is going to be identification tools for native plant identification. And Zach Ritchie, who is with the San Antonio Botanical Garden, he's in the Conservation and Collections. He's a technician there in Conservation and Collections. He's going to be talking about these identification tools. It should be really exciting. Don't want to miss it. That's next month. Okay, and we've finally reached the point we've all been waiting for here for tonight's presentation. We're really excited to hear more about the latest and greatest on Arboretum San Antonio. And we have 2 speakers that are presenting tonight. We have Dr. Kelly Lyons, who is a San Antonio chapter member. She is an advisor to the Arboretum, and she's also a professor in the Department of Biology at Trinity University. And then Thomas Corser, the CEO of Arboretum San Antonio. So we're going to transition to their presentation, and we'll get going with that shortly. Thank you for being here.
Since Tom's the CEO, I'm going to let him talk, and then I'll help handle the question and answer.
Sure, whatever.
Okay. Or if you have questions for me, I'm happy to.
Probably
type
be
up.
better to let her talk and I'll answer, but anyway.
Okay, yes, and for questions, for those of you on Zoom, please put them in the chat. We'll get to them, and then we'll also answer questions in the audience. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry. I
Let's
messed
get on
up.
Zoom.
I messed up. Sorry. I thought I was on Zoom. Well, we're trying. You would think I would know. No, we should. Thank you for letting me. This is why we have backup telling us when we're working and when we're not working. Okay, awesome. Now we're ready. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity to share the story of the Arboretum. By way of introduction, I'm a native Minnesotan. So how I ended up in Texas was cheap college education. So I come from a big family of 8 kids. And so by the time they got to me, the parents were pretty much tapped out of money. So I came down here. 1/3, the cost of in-state tuition in Texas is 1/3 of what it is in Minnesota. So I came down, went to A&M for an engineering degree, mechanical engineering degree, and ended up working in technology my whole career. I retired about 3.5 years ago out of Juniper Networks out in Silicon Valley. And I was living here, but working remotely before it was a thing. And I was enjoying retirement for about 3 or 4 months. And then my brother-in-law, Henry Cisneros, taps me on the shoulder and says, "Tom, we need to lift this Arboretum off the ground." And I said, "Sure, I'll do that in my spare time." And one thing led to another, and I was volunteering full-time for a year. And then they set the hook in my mouth and paid me. So now I'm the full-time CEO. And it's really been a cool and fun process, but boy, is it a lot of work to lift a nonprofit off the ground. Anyway, so I'm here to tell you about the Arboretum, and I want to go through the slides kind of quickly so we can entertain questions and have a really rich dialogue. One of the things I'm going to tell you or answer a lot of your question is, I don't know. I'm going to say that because I want a lot of the answers about what the Arboretum will be and what it will contain and how we'll manage that. I want that answered by you, not me, right? It's really important that as we go through the master planning process, we get engagement from San Antonio, and you are San Antonio in terms of certain expertise. We want cultural input, we want plant input, we want soil input, we want cultural input, language input, things like that to make this Arboretum San Antonio. So this is termed Arboretum San Antonio for a very, very good reason. So first, let me see if I can change the slides. That's a very good place to start.
I think
Okay.
they're probably better just using this. And I don't know why this is up.
Maybe I need to go to the presentation itself and then try it.
There we go. And then I think just use that.
Okay, perfect. See, I'm a technology guy. So I think it's important that we tell you who we are, right? I'm Tom Corser, I'm the CEO, but I am one of 2 employees that we have. Really, this is our organization. These are the, I'm going to try to move this off of here a little bit if I can. Maybe I'll put it up here. Is our board of directors, right? That's who's really involved in directing me and advising me and kind of setting the tone for the Arboretum. And as you can see, there's a bunch of people, for those that are familiar with San Antonio, probably a lot of recognizable names. Henry Cisneros being our founder as one. Vanjie Flores has been involved in a number of activities within the city. Leo Gomez, the CEO of Brooks, down on the south side. You'll hear a lot about him as I go on. Jane Macon worked closely with Henry to build a lot of the things that Henry did in his term as in city council as well as the mayor. Mary Jane Verrett is the CEO of the San Antonio Parks Foundation. Great interaction, great collaboration with her and her organization. And Laura Powell just was the most recent former chair of the San Antonio Parks Foundation and is now our finance chair on our board. Suzanne Scott, probably everybody in here has heard of Suzanne Scott at some point. She was for 15 years, was the executive director of the San Antonio River Authority. She's now with the Texas Conservancy across the state of Texas. At Rebecca Villagran from the South Side, business partnerships, and Margaret Wilson Aguilia is also Port San Antonio chair. So a great set of leaders in our city that are helping put this together. In addition to our governance chairs, let me try this method. Now I'll have to click on the slides. That's right. Got it. Thank you. Our advisors, of which Dr. Kelly Lyons is one, but these are the people I rely on because I come from technology. I'm not a plant guy. I'm not a forester. I'm not an arborist. I'm a guy who kind of puts things together and make things happen. So I rely a lot on these people. I've had them out at the Arboretum at least half a dozen times, taking walks, telling me how I should manage it. We've all got one scheduled next week where I'm bringing people out to say, how should we care for it in its early life, right? What should we mow? What shouldn't we mow? And how we return a former golf course back to its natural state. Very important that we have those areas to demonstrate that. We've got the city arborist, Mark Bird. We've got engineers, Tom Carter, Mike Frisbee, former city engineer at the city of San Antonio. Joining Dr. Lyons is Rodolfo Barrias from Texas A&M San Antonio, also a biology professor. We've got 3 different arborists here to advise. And we've got representatives from CPS, SAWS, and Sarah on our advisory board. So great engagement, not just from them as people, but their firms as well. So it's very happy with that. We've gotten funding from Bexar County. We've got $7.3 million out of their capital campaign from a bond funded, and we use that to buy land, to master plan, and to build roads and parking lot infrastructure. So we're kind of excluding it to that. 7.3 million is a lot of money, but we've also need money for other things. And that's where the city of San Antonio's sponsoring us $400,000 for building a tree nursery. And so we have yet to build that yet, but it's going to be a great place to grow various generations of native trees and trees that we can both plant on the Arboretum as well as plant outside in the city of San Antonio, give those away or sell them or what have you. And then we've gotten great support from Holloman Price Foundation, just gave us $200,000 grant, unrestricted, which is really important at this stage of our life. CPS Energy has been a great supporter over the last couple of years. Henry himself has contributed to this in a big way. Brooks, as I'll tell you about, helped us buy the land as well as gave us cash. So a number of people are investing, and we've got a big development effort underway to triple the number of names that you might see on a slide like this. So I say this because money at this stage of our life is very important. We can't go forward in a project of this magnitude without money. So timeline. Again, we started about 2.5 years ago. Henry wrote this op-ed to say he has a vision for an arboretum. He's been to many different cities around the country and sees those kind of green spaces as defining instances of their city and defining places, green spaces for their city. Really wanted to see one in San Antonio. We had an opportunity to have one at the Espada, just below the Espada Missions, where TJ Maxx had some extra property. A&M and Sarah had a kind of a joint venture to take that property over for free from TJ Maxx. We were going to put an arboretum there, but they put a conservation easement on it that said, you can have an arboretum, but it can only be 4 acres. Does not make an arboretum, at least in my mind. So we went shopping and we found the Old Republic Golf Club had shut down about 2 years prior to then. And it was a perfect spot. Had a Salado Creek running through it. I'll tell you all about that in a minute. But Brooks got so excited about that being in close proximity to them that their board decided to invest $1 million to buy some of the land for us. And we gained our 501c3 status in 22. 23 was largely working the contracts for the county to allocate the money such that we could buy the land. We got through that. Tell me, it was a nosebleed of a process, but we got through it. Very thankful for it, but it was a very difficult process. But we bought the land in November, again, in conjunction with Brooks. Brooks brought $1 million worth of land. We bought $2 million, and we now own that land as of November. And then we launched the master planning process. So now that we had the land, we went into the master planning RFQ, request for qualifications process, in which we had 18 very high quality responses. We then got narrowed that down to 3 and went through an RFP process, which we just landed, thanks to Kelly and others' help, on a vendor, which we'll tell you about on May 8th. But we landed on the Republic Golf Club. And so now that we have a firm, we've got to run through a contract and negotiate fees and so forth, but then we'll go forward in master planning. That's 2 of our big thrusts in 2024. 1 is fundraising, as I mentioned. 2 is master planning. So now that we'll have 188 acres, we got to figure out what we're going to do with it. We're located on the southeast part of town, just east of Brooks, between 37, 410 and Southeast Military. It really is a fantastic piece of land. I invite each and every one of you to get a hold of me and let's go take a hike. It's really a lot of fun. It's a beautiful place. We've got, as I'll show you here, we've got the white lines that you see here on this property are the former golf cart paths. That's still in very good shape. They're concrete paths, so they're very easy to walk. There's just a few places that need a little love, but generally it's in good shape. The pink line that is a little faded, but it's showing up pretty good there. But that's the right of way for the bike trails. So the city of San Antonio, the Howard Peak Greenway trails that necklaces the city, this will be an important segment of that. That's only right of way at this point. It's not built out. We're hoping in the next couple of years that'll be built out, but it's right of way. So we're really happy with that. The area just above the little key area there. Oh, I got a pointer here. On the this area right here is City of San Antonio property. They've already built the bike trail and they're about to open up the trailhead that's there, probably in the next couple weeks. But that property is going to be included in our master planning scope. So they want to understand how they should leverage that, given the proximity to the Arboretum, and make it look Arboretum-esque. So we're very pleased with that addition, that they want to keep that in our scope. We purchased, again, I apologize to those online. Oh, sure. It's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, sorry. They can't see the pointer.
Tom, stay away from the pointer.
Thank you.
So this is the right of way. This was the land I was just pointing to is the City of San Antonio property. The black lines here indicate land that's out of the floodplain. Very important for an arboretum because we're not going to charge to get into this arboretum, but we've got to maintain 188 acres. We've got to have a business model which is economically sustainable. Very important to me as kind of the businessman here is I got to make sure this is sustainable economically. And so this out of floodplain land is very important for us to put up nature centers, to put up spaces like this where we can bring in income such that we could pay all those master gardeners to take care of that land, the arborists, the people to mow the grass where we need to, and so forth. We bought 18 acres up in this area, which has a lot of out of floodplain land. It has a recycled water contract, 300 acre feet, meaning if we wanted to use it all, we could put 19 inches of water on those 188 acres. Now, we're not going to do that. Trust me, that would be very irresponsible of us to show a very, very lush area in an otherwise very dry area. So we've got to be responsible about trading off beauty of what we could show and growing plants in a responsible way, but also demonstrating to the city what the right way to grow plants in San Antonio is, right? And to have xeriscape demonstrations, to have the right plants such that it can grow here for our children's children to grow plants here. So we need a lot of advice from yourselves, as well as some of the arborists around it, about how to appropriately use that water and what to plant. So we're really looking forward to the interaction that we'll have from you folks. I think that's all I wanted to say there. As we started the master planning process and put out the RFP, request for proposal, to the 3 firms that we chose, we really wanted to drive them with some ideals that we behold as a board about what we value. And we came up with these for nature, heritage, discovery, and community. I think those are really important terms. And then what's behind that in terms of what we believe and what we want to build in this arboretum. So those are very important values that are driving us, that we want to behold as we go through the master planning. And as you'll see, there's 3 components to our master planning effort: strategic planning, site planning, and operational planning. And that strategic planning, I expect these to be refined. I expect that to evolve as we evolve. In fact, as I depart the Arboretum at some point in my life, somebody new is going to come in, and a new board of directors will come in. And those values may change as that leadership changes, as the need of San Antonio changes. So this is a living kind of statement of who we are. But I find it a very credible start to the values of the Arboretum. Why an Arboretum? I'm a big fan of the word why, right? Whenever you ask about an organization, when you ask about an entity, when you ask about a person, what's your why? And our why really comes in these 5 flavors. Is we really want to promote health and wellness, both physical and mental. There's all sorts of articles that have been written, especially as we've been through the pandemic, about spending time in nature and how restorative it is physically as well as mentally. And we really want to evidence that and promote that. Community and education. There's a huge opportunity for education at the Arboretum. Outdoor education is unmet need in San Antonio. The zoo has an outdoor education program that's 3 times oversubscribed, or the demand is 3 times of what they can serve. And so we want to begin to help that and begin outdoor education program. All sorts of community efforts that you can do around a natural space like this, that we've seen evidence at the Botanical Gardens, we've seen evidence at Hardberger Park here, we've seen it evidence around the city, and we want to bring that to the Arboretum. One of our visions of myself as well as the board is, once we build out the parking lots, is to have those parking lots filled with school buses on school days, where that be the destination where schools come for their outdoor projects and tours. Environmental sustainability. There's no question we're getting hotter, no question we're getting drier, and how we respond to that is going to be important. So we want to be that center of excellence, that place people go to from a plant response, from a water management when it rains heavy, how we use our green infrastructure to mitigate some of that flooding. So environmental sustainability is a very important tenet of who we stand for. Equitable access to nature. I did a study when we went to look for land in San Antonio and looked at where parks are in the city, with north side, south side, east side, west side, and so forth, and found it relatively equal if you look at acreage, that our parks are equally dispersed pretty fairly. I thought, that's good. But then you start looking at investment in parks, drastically different, right? And the investment that we make in our parks in various parts of the city, south side being one where it's underinvested. And so this is our opportunity to begin that equitable balance around San Antonio. And we don't mean the Arboretum to be a southeast side asset. Yeah, we're putting it in the southeast side. We want to make sure those residents of the southeast side are very proud of this, right? As an asset that they have. But we want this to represent South Texas. In fact, we've talked about how we can work into Mexico and have some of our Mexican friends use and leverage the Arboretum for various purposes. So equitable access to nature is very important to us. And there's no question that many arboretums around the country have an economic development driver that can bring up the value of properties around an arboretum. And that's one of the fundamental reasons Brooks invested $1 million in the arboretum, is they see that being consistent with their model of taking an old Air Force base 20 years ago and making a entity out of that, and putting commerce, putting education, putting business, putting residents, living spaces in there, and bring up the economic value and all of the metrics that you see to measure a public entity like that have risen dramatically with Brooks. And the same thing can be true with the Arboretum. So economic development is very important. So here we are at master planning. Again, we had 18 very high quality responses to a request for qualification, which is basically a much easier response than a request for proposal. We took those 18, narrowed it down to 3 very good firms: Reed Hildebrand, MVVA, and Sasaki. And one of our ardent demands in the RFQ as well as the RFP was that they have a very large local presence, because none of those 3 firms that we chose are from San Antonio. But 50% of the participants in there, the team that those landscape architects put together, are from San Antonio or Boston area. So we found that very important, and we also chose the firm that we chose based on that and their involvement, their integration of local partners. We're going to announce that on May 8th. Right now, I've got to go through contract negotiations with them, fee negotiations, and come up with a contract such that we're certain it's going to be this firm that we selected, and we'll announce that on May 8th. But again, as I mentioned, 3 deliverables: strategic plan, site plan, and operations plan. So we've got to understand better who we are, who we serve, why we serve them, what area we're going to address the Arboretum to serve. The site plan is a classic master planning. What are we going to put where? How are we going to phase this out? How are we going to care for the soils? How are we going to care for the trees? How are we going to care for the plants? How are we going to care for invasive species? What we're going to do about the wild hogs that we have out there? What are we going to do about the wildlife that's there? How are we going to make sure it's safe for people to go out there? The only way we're going to see success in an Arboretum is such that it's safe for people to go out there, because our biggest metric is usage, right? And if it's not safe, we've got to make sure it is for people to use it. And then operations plan. We got to have a business model behind this. As I meant, it's got to be economically sustainable. So we've got to have the business model. How are we going to generate earned revenue? How are we going to go out for fundraising? What are we going to do for fundraising? What kind of programming are we going to have? What kind of employees do we have to back up that programming? What's our volunteer plan? Things like that. All that has to be built out, right? I don't have that today. And that's a very important part of any operating Arboretum. And so it is going to take 12 to 18 months to complete. So it's going to be a long process. It's going to be a lot of community engagement, a lot of talking to various stakeholders to make sure that we do the right thing. But that's time well spent, and probably money well spent, because if we don't do that planning up front, we're not set up for the future. So with that, Kelly, anything you wanted to add before we get into Q&A? Okay, so Q&A, and I'll repeat the question, right?
Yes, we can start today. We've got one on chat, but why don't we take questions from the room here first?
Rachel.
So you did not have on your slide why in Arboretum the word research, and I heard you talk about research. So do you see that as part of environmental sustainability, or where did that fit on your slide?
Yeah, I think it's a cross between environmental sustainability and education, because one of the things we've talked to like Texas A&M about is doing research to understand, and this is one of the things that I really want to engage and get your thoughts on, is how do we make sure that we plant the right native trees, as well as the trees that are we need to recommend to San Antonio, South Texas, to plant, such that our children's children will see that tree. Drier, hotter, things like that. And so I want to bring in, and it might be controversial, what trees do we recommend we plant for tomorrow and a couple generations from now? And so research like that, and to have, I went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison's Arboretum, and they have a whole section full of research where students are involved as well as professors doing fundamental research on plant life. And it was very robust and well, a lot of technology in there in terms of how they're monitoring climate as well as growth and things like that. Very impressive. So yes, research is a miss on that slide. I'll make sure I correct that. Thank you, Rachel.
And just a reminder to please repeat the question.
Oh, sorry about that. And I just said it. The question was, what about research? And hopefully you heard the answer. You bet.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the great things about the whole advisory board and the board as well is there are a lot of science advisors. And I think the difference, if you look around at what the state of Texas has as far as what you're talking about, doing real research on plant materials, we don't have anything. And I think in order to be, I mean, if you really think about the botanical gardens and all that, researchers that are doing plant material development, we've lost a lot of that and throughout the country in the state of Texas. And going forward, and like Tom says, the only way to be climate ready really is to do the research on those plants and to figure out what we can advise people. And that might even move down into, I'm thinking it could move down into vegetable crops as well. There's no reason why it has to be just horticultural species, right? And so we can assure you that the board is thinking broadly about that and trying to make it an internationally recognized arboretum that's doing the same kinds of things that the National Arboretum is doing. Or even the Arboretum at Harvard, right? We'd like it to have, we don't have that kind of presence here in South and even arid ecosystems in the United States. Yeah.
Sure.
I've walked the area. It's South Texas brush country's coming in there. End of story. A lot of problems with people buying properties that take out so much understory. There's the forested area with understory. It's critical for insects, it's critical for birds, it's critical for things. So I'm hoping that you look at the whole ecology of the area. I started growing in North Bexar County plants from the Rio Grande Valley. I've grown at least a dozen. They're adaptable, they're hot weather plants. So if you want to move something south, you can move. There's a lot of plants you can move south. From the south up here, because the habitat we're meeting right now, the Blackland Prairie, with the South Texas thorn shrub country or whatever, it's well represented out there. The other thing I found out being out there was I talked to a guy who was 50 years ago and biked that area as a kid. They're all on the other side where the city has. There's dozens of dirt bike trails that have been used there by kids, the girls and boys growing up there for the last probably 100 years or more, you know. So there's a cultural connection theoretically there from those people. And some of them moved out. This guy was living in Vernon or something like this. So I think there's going to be a great opportunity out there to renew some of the cultural connections that are out there.
So I don't think it was a question, more of a comment, but if I could try to paraphrase for those online, is that right? That there's a great deal of learnings from the understory that we can take into the Arboretum and study and leverage, as well as the cultural history of that land itself that we need to, let's say, adopt as well as listen to. That do okay?
That's right. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
Yes, sir.
Is one of the goals of an arboretum to make people aware of what's viable in our geographic area, and also see how they live over time in that area? I mean, would that be a goal of, maybe an end goal of the Arboretum?
So I'm going to let Kelly answer a good part of that, but I'll repeat the question. I'm learning.
Doing good. He does learn really fast.
So, what is the goal? Would one of the goals of the Arboretum be that we're learning about what can grow here in our area and kind of make recommendations to San Antonio what to plant? Is that right?
and maybe see what it looks like when it's grown?
And to see what it looks like when it's grown. So I would say absolutely that's one of our purposes, right? Is to Rachel's question about research is to find out what those plants are, plant them, and demonstrate to San Antonio. Because imagine, most people come to an arboretum and they could care less what the name of that tree is or what the name of that plant is. They're just walking through a beautiful area, right? And I don't blame them, right? That's a fine use of an arboretum. But there is that component of people who want to go there and be informed and be inspired about what can be possible. And that's what I want to do, right? That's what I'd like to influence the master planning to do, is really try to inspire and inform people about what's possible and then what that looks like too.
Yeah, we have two very specific issues that are going to be fun to discuss. One of those is people think about arboretums, they think about majestic trees, things like that. And that's maybe if you go to the National Arboretum in DC, that's how it feels. You walk in, there's majestic trees, but our trees are different. Some of them are majestic, like if you think of a live oak in a very, very well-watered situation, they may be very majestic. Some of them are much more modest, right? Like the mesquite trees or some of the leguminous sub-shrub semi-trees that we have, right? We have a lot of those kinds of things. So that's kind of a discussion we're going to have as a board and with the master plan to figure out, what do we want it to look like? Maybe it'll be both. But getting to your point also, of asking what, if you go to an arboretum, do you expect to see trees that maybe can grow here that are great horticulturally, but aren't native, or maybe aren't that well adapted, but maybe you just like them and you'll give them a lot of water. Like I think about things like, what's that plant that I realized it's not a Mexican plum. It's got white flowers, big white flowers and green fruit and people. Mexican olive, that's what I was thinking. You can grow Mexican olive in Houston if you want to, but it's not a very good idea because it's super invasive. And people are always asking me, oh, is it good to grow here? Well, it doesn't act very invasive here. Maybe it's not an ideal species, but people want to see what it looks like, right? So you might have a section of an arboretum that's carved out for, these are not native, but they do grow well here. People seem to like them in horticulture, like crepe myrtles. Come on, people love them. They're still going to plant them. And so you might want a section of the arboretum carved out for that, and then another part that says these are the Texas natives that are climate adapted and probably the ones you want to use because they're going to be better for the food webs, right? So there's lots of ways to interpret all of this, and that's part of the master plan we're going to have to go through, certainly.
But if I could, I'll make one other comment, and that is, I've gotten lectured quite a bit by people such as yourself about being in a good way. Thank you. but to be very, very, I'm going to use it 3 times, very careful about making sure you don't bring in invasive species. And I think I've learned that it's not just about proliferation of growth. It's also about impacting ecosystems and so forth, right? So it runs rather deep in our ecology that we've got to be very careful. And that goes back again to Rachel's comment about research, right? Is that we've got to be very deliberate and careful about that. And that's one of the other things that as we go through master planning, we got to really keep after the care of that and making sure we're responsible about how we do bringing in other things for demonstration or specimen planting, things like that. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think there was another one over here.
How do you envision it integrating with the botanical garden already here? Because that botanical garden does some of that already.
You bet. So the question was, how do we expect the Arboretum to integrate with the botanical garden that's already here that does a number of these things? Well, as you know, various large mature cities have multiple universities that might have 2 law schools. You might notice that there are other entities in a city that do similar things in either a different part of town or address a different aspect of things. That's very similar to the way I look at the botanical garden and the Arboretum. There's a Venn diagram overlap of what we do indeed, right? We're worried about plants. We're worried about environmental sustainability. We want to nurture usage of those properties for people like yourself, right? But we do have different purposes, and we do, and so it's also purpose and place. Botanical garden is in a different place in the city than we will be, right? And so I look at them as complementary. And yes, we will have similarities in doing the same thing. And quite honestly, from my perspective, we're going to be competing for fundraising dollars, right? But I think we have the capacity. We deserve another place like this, and we as a city got to look at ourselves as being that mature where we can have two entities like that. Does that help?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I also think there's also an opportunity for an arboretum to not only keep track of what they grow, but what is growing in the city as well. And they can also integrate with the city arborists to do this as well. One of the great things about the firm that we probably will be hiring, I don't know yet, but is that they actually have somebody on their team who mentioned that they're specialists in horticultural accession and de-accession of collections, which is something we would desperately need. And that would bring us into the realm of science way more than just specimen plants, right? So we really have to figure out what we want to be in that regard. We're not there yet. Yeah.
There's another question over here. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I think you were.
I've walked the area many times, and I think it's going to be a great location. Where in your master plan do you think about, there's a lot of horseweed and ragweed there. And so where is that in your plan? And the other question would be, have you done soil samples already? It's right next to the creek. How much does that change, what works there versus what works somewhere else in San Antonio?
So first of all, I'll repeat the question, then you're going to be disappointed in my answer. But the question was, what do we plan to do with all the ragweed and other plant life that's out there that we don't necessarily want? And have we looked at the soil makeup of the area as you go into the riparian zone versus the higher level elevations and so forth? And so the disappointing answer is, I don't know, because we really got to let the master planning answer that. Right. And so participation of your voice in that process is going to be critical to say we need that or we don't. And we need to understand the soil here and the soil there. Right. And so we have plans, obviously, to do a survey of all the trees, do a survey of all the plants, understand soils, do soil testing. Right. That will be part of the process. Right. How detailed we go, we'll probably need your help to help inform that, right? As that might be different than other arboretums that might be around the country that these planners come from, in which they kind of put a template out there, and then we've got to impact that with our informed voices. So that's my disappointing answer. Anything to compliment?
Well, as far as ragweed goes, we're going to defer to Lee Marlowe, who thinks it's actually a really good species. So I would say that, again, coming in with a very informed eye on all of that, right? Ragweed is here to stay. It is a host plant for many, many species. And so we'll have to manage it for sure, right? But that will all, again, be in the master plan. And again, we're hopeful that we have great botanists on staff who have a real, that's the goal, is to have a botanist on staff that can handle all these discussions, right? It's a lot of really great.
We've got some chat questions if we could get to.
Sure.
Okay.
Chat questions.
So there's a question, has there been an inventory of trees and shrubs completed on the site?
Almost.
Mark and I are looking forward to that.
So exactly. The question was, has there been an inventory of trees and shrubs on the property of the Arboretum? And the answer was no, but sort of. What we've done is we've had an informal walk around the property with Kelly was there as well. And we've identified, just out of memory, so we didn't do a survey per se, but out of memory, about 20 different species of trees. But we are planning to get out there and actually do that survey, locate them, get the species and document it, which is more of a survey. And one of the drivers of that is in Chicago, there's the Morton Arboretum. Morton Arboretum is probably, at least in my view, one of the finest arboretums in the country. And they have a program called ArbNet, which defines and classifies arboretums at various levels, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so once we identify 25 unique species, have a CEO, have a board of directors, we can apply for a level 1 arboretum, which will bring us some cachet in the arboretum world anyway. And so hopefully we'll have that soon. But the answer really is no, we haven't done a formal survey. Right?
That would probably be done as part of the.
It's gonna be done.
It'll be done as part of the master plan. Yep.
And I want to,
Yep. Please.
the firm that we're looking at is super nerdy about hydrologic stuff, soils, all of that, and they'll yeah, that will be a big part of the master plan to make sure we have a formal survey. And also getting to some of your questions, I'm sensing there's a question about sort of understory, and Jerry mentioned this a little bit, but it's clear that people who are moving or are part of the advisory board are really concerned about this being an ecosystem driven arboretum, not just a specimen, single specimen all over the place. So, and that understory, prairie, remnant population, all that kind of riparian, there's a riparian zone, right? All of that will be under consideration for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a couple of comments about Firewise landscaping, and are you considering incorporating Firewise landscaping as part of the plan?
Not right now. No, like not. No. Like let's burn it before. No, I'm
Repeat
kidding.
the question.
They want to know whether there's going to be Firewise planting, and I'm kidding. This is not an ecosystem that would burn right now because again, they took out the understory. So it's just a lot of just standing trees. There's not a lot of fire and there's not a lot of fuel. So at this point, it would not even require a burn, but I could see at some point, yeah, thinking about that, certainly along those lines. It'd be easier to do in the south side of San Antonio because there's not as many trees, definitely.
Although
sorry, talking about fire extinguishers. Like, yeah,
no, I would, so you can see, it's a little tough to see, but you can see the golf holes here, right? Underneath all the coloring that I did on this. But this area here was not part of the golf course, right? So that, at least in my estimation, is probably 50-year-old regrowth. So that might be candidate for it at some point, but have we contemplated it? I certainly haven't at this point, but all things are on the table, I would imagine.
I think part of what the sentiment might be is that where it's immediately adjacent to homes, planning for the landscaping to be Firewise.
I see.
Oh,
Yes.
I see.
I see. Okay,
Oh, well,
that's
sure. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, say again. So the flavor of the question was more about the adjacencies to neighborhoods and how our landscaping is mindful of fire and in making sure we mitigate anything with what we plant there. And absolutely right. I mean, that's well, in fact, I'll put this plug in about where we are. We're pinched between two very excited neighborhoods. I've met with the HOAs in both of those neighborhoods, and they're very excited that we're bringing an arboretum in. And I'm very excited about getting to know them, right? When we own a home, one of the best things you can do for your safety and security is to know your neighbors and your neighbors to know you. I feel the same way about the arboretum. I want them to get to know the arboretum. I want them to own it, to feel it's their arboretum, because I think that will be one of the biggest things we can do from a safety and a security perspective. And the same thing's true with Firewise plantings.
There was I know there was a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Part of what makes San Antonio special biologically is the confluence of ecotypes.
5 different regions, yeah.
Is that part of the mandate of the Arboretum, or are you really having to stick to, well, we're in the plains ecotype?
Please.
Not at all. Actually, it's a really the question was, is this will the Arboretum be a consideration of multiple ecosystems? Is that ecotypes? So because it is there's a lot of upland and then there's a lot of riparian areas in there. There's a little piece of blackland prairie in there. Most of the soils are actually blackland prairie soils, even though it's sort of a scrubby habitat, oak woodland kind of thing. Yes, it can be a place where a lot of those ecoregions could be represented. Absolutely, and that's up for debate. Yeah. In the back.
Rachel.
I'm wondering that new collaboration that they have developed between the Botanical Garden and the Museum and the Whitty Museum and the McNair, where they have a one-day pass, or are going to, wherever someone's invited and encourages them to go to all of them. Are y'all looking at developing something like that with like Mitchell Lake or some other entities so we could have a, another kind of one day pass concept on the south side?
So the question is, the botanical gardens, the Whitty, the museum, and other in that little cultural corridor, as it's sometimes termed, have an agreement where they'll buy one pass and people can go on any of those entities on that day. And the answer is absolutely, we will. And in fact, there's national passes where you can buy a membership, let's say at the Arboretum San Antonio, and that will get you into a museum in Chicago and a botanical garden in San Francisco and the National Arboretum, and your membership would, yeah. And so there's that cross collaboration even nationally, and that's a program that I've looked into as well. So the answer is absolutely yes. We consider that, and to bring in others. I would like to expand that to all of San Antonio, where people could involve themselves, because we don't expect people's eyeballs to just be on the Arboretum. It's going to be across the city, but we want them to consider the Arboretum. Yes, sir.
I'm a native San Antonian, and I've seen many projects in my time, even as a professional. And too oftentimes, you spend tens of millions of dollars, and then when you get going, you fail to fund the maintenance and upkeep. You see it here, and I sure hope that becomes a focus, because that's what it's about. I hear, well, we're being taken care and maintained by volunteers. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Volunteers don't repair this building.
I agree.
Sure hope you don't have volunteers taking a project like this and then not maintaining it 20 years from now.
So there's nothing I can tell you right now that's going to assuage your concerns, right? Other than to say, as I go into master planning as the CEO of the Arboretum, right, that business model that we come up with is critical. I'm sorry, the question was, as we, midway through the answer, I give the question. But the question was, in experiencing various things, big things being built in a city like this, in many cities across the country, right? They get built with tens of millions of dollars, but they don't have the funding for the maintenance, right? The operational maintenance of it. And I think it's a fantastic question. And my answer is, to the best that I can do, my concern with this business model is to ensure that. I've been to many different arboretums around the country, and the one I was very impressed with respect to your question was Penn State. Penn State is a hanging off of a big, well-funded university, but they have a policy where if they want to build, let's say, a $10 million grove, they can't put a shovel in the ground until they have $20 million, such that they have $10 million there for an annuity maintenance, right? I love that, and I hate it, because now I got to raise $20 million for a $10 million project. But it makes really fiscal sound sense, right? Exactly. That's right. That's right. But I think those are principles, and our board is aware of that, and they're adamant as I am about that, right? And so we're going to step very carefully when the master planning comes up with phase one and says it's going to cost X dollars. We better have a path towards Y dollars, which includes those maintenance dollars, right? So it's very critical. I agree with your sentiment. I'm concerned about it as well, but there's nothing I can say that we're doing now to prevent that, other than making sure those principles are in our master planning. Yes. Chat question?
Yes. Are there plans to create gardens that showcase other native plants and native plant communities besides trees?
Are there
prairie,
things like that? The question was, are we planning on plantings, trees, gardens to demonstrate other
native plants other than trees?
Other than trees, yeah. So are we going to focus on just trees, or are we going to look across all plants? Absolutely going to look across all plants. The word arboretum, arbor, tree, retum, place, Latin word for a place for trees. We will honor that. We will implement that, right? but the understory, right, of trees has plants, right? Our prairies, somebody asked me earlier, are we going to have prairies there? Absolutely, right? That's part of our land. And we've got to demonstrate that. And we want people to walk through an arboretum and see San Antonio, see the kind of landscape, the kind of vegetation that our Native American brethren have seen, that our Spaniards when they came in, our Mexicans when they came in. So we want to demonstrate that. So absolutely, we will. Any comment there?
Yeah, we all want to know what plants to grow in deep shade without any water. So yes.
I'm going to go with another question if I could. Yes, ma'am.
What is the property to the southeast? Is that privately owned?
Okay, so the question was, what is this property to the southeast? I'm going to give you two answers. This property right here to the east of it, the southeast corner here, that's going to be developed into houses. All right. This area down here, and let's see if I can look at the other map and give you a better view. Yeah, this will be better. So this whole area here is privately owned land, but is largely floodplain. Okay, because the Salado Creek runs through it and it's pretty flat. So I look at that and say,
Wetland.
Prospect, wetland, right? I look at it as prospect for growth to our south, right? Now, no, that's not part of the plan. I look at it as possibility, but it's not part of our plan, right? There's other things that we got to contemplate at this stage of our life, but I don't see anybody clamoring to buy that land today. So we're going to keep our eye on it. That could be future expansion. I don't know. You bet.
I want to say something about the fundraising, and partly as a tribute to Tom and also this group. They brought me in on the advisory board, and I was like, sure, of course, I'm happy to advise. I have never, ever in my whole life seen such a successful team raise so much money, secure land, and bring in all the stakeholders as fast as I've seen this team operate. And I can tell you, but you can go out and tell people it's time to fundraise, and this is going to go, and it's going to be very big. And I'm incredibly impressed and very, very happy that I got to be a part of it, honestly. So kudos to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just we're cutting it close
Okay.
to time, so maybe one more question in the room.
Okay.
And then
one more online.
If you could let people know how they could get involved and provide more input, ask more questions later. But let's take one more question in the room.
Yes, sir. I think you were next.
How big of a drain on our Sloss water system do you anticipate this to be?
0.
Really?
We've got, when we purchased the land, it was a golf course, and they had a 50-year recycled water contract. So all the water they use to keep the golf course green and fill their pond that they have on the site was recycled water out of their water treatment plant just to the south. We inherited that same contract. Now, we're not going to use 300 acre feet, right? We don't have that much to water, and we want to be responsible in our demonstration of what should and could be green. But we have plenty of water that's not going to impact the Edwards Aquifer at all. The question, I'm really screwing this up.
It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get the idea. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you could just let people know how they might be able to provide input into the process if there's going to be such a.
You bet. So on May 8th, we're going to hold a press conference to announce the master planning vendor. And it's just going to kind of be a press thing. And then immediately after that, we're planning on a community event where we bring that master planner out and people can meet them and they can give kind of talks about what their view is beyond mine, right? And introduce themselves to San Antonio to begin that public engagement. And so that's a good place to start. But until we get a plan together about when those public engagement sessions are, I don't have anything specific to tell you other than, again, I invite you to come out and take a hike. I would love to host you, part of you, all of you, to come out and see the land and have that discussion as we walk around. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much. Let's.
Can we go to the property?
Well,
now?
it's not, so the question was,
Yeah, go ahead.
the question was, can we go to the property today? And I'm gonna say no, you cannot, because it's not ready for prime time yet. Now, I'll take you out there, right? And anybody who wants to go, I'll take you, right? But I kind of gotta be there for insurance purposes. Until we get ready to activate this and open it up. People ask me all the time, Tom, when are you gonna open the Arboretum? And I say, it depends on your definition of open, right? And so we could take those 4 miles of golf cart paths and have people walk them and get some exercise, right? I'd love to do that, but I can't do it until I'm ready. And we just acquired this in November. And as Kelly said, we're trying to move at lightning speed, and I'm just not ready for it yet. But hopefully within this year we can.
Sorry, I snuck in the
Well,
last one.
So I was just handed this, flyer for a eco study tour that's
Yes.
happening.
Yep.
So an eco study tour Saturday, April 13th from 9 to 11. We can send it out to folks via email. This is a partnership of Sierra Club, Eco Centro, Arboretum San Antonio, et cetera. So there will be opportunities. Once again, we should probably close down everything. Thanks for all the great questions. Let's give another round of applause to our speakers.
Thank you. Pleasure hearing from you.
Wonderful to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.